It's the only way I could get back to you. Come on.
Open your eyes and look at what you've done!
When you thought the story of Dexter Morgan was over, a new chapter begins. Dexter Resurrection was announced this summer, which is another Dexter show that will pick up right where New Blood left off. But what happens when the legacy of one of TV's most notorious anti-heroes falls into the hands of his own son? Well, I wanted to do a little deep dive and come up with some scenarios that could unfold in Dexter Resurrection. This is Binge Cult. Subscribe, motherfucker. We'll start off with probably the most likely choice. Dexter goes on the run. After faking his death or surviving the gunshot wound, Dexter is now a fugitive. The truth about his identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher has been revealed, and the authorities launch a massive manhunt. He becomes one of the FBI's most wanted, with his face plastered on every news outlet and social media platform. Batista, now knowing the truth about his former friend, takes the lead in the manhunt, joined by Detective Quinn, who's coming back, and other members of Miami Metro. They are determined to bring Dexter to justice. Batista's torn between his sense of betrayal and his understanding of why Dexter did what he did. But Quinn, who always had suspicions about Dexter, is relentless, seeing this as his chance to finally prove that he was right. While on the run, Dexter's dark urges resurface, and he encounters new killers during his journey, and unable to resist, starts taking them down. However, these killings are more chaotic and less controlled than before, showing that he's more desperate and becoming sloppy, which could lead to Miami Metro finding him. Harrison, learning that Dexter's still alive, faces a moral dilemma when Dexter finds him and asks him for his forgiveness for killing Logan. Of course, he would explain that it had to be done if Dexter wanted to escape authorities, but now Harrison must make a choice. Should he join his dad on the run or turn him in? And this creates a deep emotional conflict, especially as Harrison starts to develop his own dark urges. Ultimately, he decides to help his father, but their relationship is fraught with tension as they struggle with trust and guilt. The series could build towards a final confrontation between Dexter and Miami Metro. Batista and Quinn, having followed Dexter's trail, corner him and Harrison in either a small town, LA, like they planned at the end of New Blood, or better yet, take it back to where it all began and come back to Miami. The tensions peak as Dexter prepares for a last stand, possibly sacrificing himself to protect Harrison, or finally being captured, setting the stage for a climactic ending and possibly for a continuation of the story. The other scenario here is unlikely in my opinion, as Michael C. Hall has been announced to be starring in Dexter Resurrection, and during an interview hinted at the fact that Dexter isn't dead.
I think it'll pick up right where we left off.
Okay.
But I feel like it would be weird not to mention this one. Harrison Morgan becomes the central character in Resurrection. So, after killing Dexter, Harrison grapples with the trauma and guilt of murdering his own father, even though Dexter was a serial killer. Harrison's internal struggle with his dark urges, similar to Dexter's Dark Passenger, become the main focus of the show. He starts seeing visions of Dexter, much like Dexter saw Harry, as a manifestation of his conscience and dark urges, guiding and taunting him as he tries to navigate his life without succumbing to his inherited dark tendencies. Angela Bishop, who let Harrison go at the end of New Blood, returns as a reoccurring character, now trying to track Harrison. She's a little suspicious of him as he did murder someone, but also feels a sense of responsibility for him, knowing what he did was in response to his father's twisted influence. Angela's role is complicated as she wrestles with whether to bring Harrison to justice or help him avoid his father's fate. In this scenario, Dexter continues to be a part of Harrison's life as a mental projection. He represents Harrison's darker instincts and the internal battle between his father's legacy and his desire to live a normal life. Dexter might even encourage Harrison to embrace his dark side, believing it to be a way of protecting himself and others. I also think it would be kind of cool to bring Deb into the mix. Similar to how she appeared in New Blood, Deborah could continue to haunt Harrison. However, her role might be different in comparison to Dexter, from being a chaotic force to one of guidance, trying to steer Harrison away from the path Dexter took, creating a duality of influences in Harrison's mind. This role could also be played by Rita, which would be a little freaky, basically just Harrison imagining his parents. But then there's also Hannah McKay. Though it was mentioned that Hannah died of cancer, flashbacks or even new revelations about her could play a role. Perhaps Hannah left a journal or some other form of communication that Harrison discovers, giving him insight into his stepmother's thoughts and her struggle with her own dark past, which might influence his decisions in this season. Now, another scenario I came up with is definitely going to piss some people off, but what if Dexter escapes charges on a technicality? After surviving the gunshot wound and being apprehended apprehended, Dexter finds himself facing trial for the murders committed as the Bay Harbor Butcher. However, his legal defense, perhaps led by a cunning lawyer who actually admires Dexter's vigilantism, discovers a crucial technicality. Evidence against Dexter is ruled inadmissible due to procedural errors or mishandling by Miami Metro during their investigation years ago. I mean, remember Miami Metro's performance in the earlier seasons of Dexter, especially the first season. I think it was even mentioned at how low Miami Metro's solving rate was for cases before the show really kicked off. The trial becomes a media circus, with public opinion deeply divided. Some view Dexter as a monster who must be punished, while others see him as a hero who rid the world of dangerous criminals. The courtroom is filled with tension as witnesses, including those who knew Dexter well, testify both for and against him. Angel Batista would be devastated by the possibility that Dexter could walk free after all these years. He wrestles with his conscience, knowing that justice is about to be thwarted by a legal technicality. He considers taking matters into his own hands and even possibly confronting Dexter outside the court, and this role could also be for Quinn if they decide to bring him back. With the charges dropped, Dexter is technically a free man, but he knows he will never truly be free. The public, law enforcement, and even other vigilantes might still target him. He must decide whether to disappear and start a new life under another alias or continue his mission in a more covert manner. Harrison would be confused and angry here, struggling with the idea that his father could escape punishment. He questions whether Dexter's actions were justified and if he's destined to follow in his father's footsteps. Plus, keep in mind, if Dexter is acquitted of the charges for the Bay Harbor Butcher, that doesn't mean he will be acquitted for any future murders that he commits. This could be a very interesting angle if done correctly, but if I'm being honest, this might be the least possible scenario in this entire video. The next scenario could either play out right away in Dexter Resurrection, or it could be the follow-up season to the first scenario that I talked about in the video. Dexter is captured and put on trial, facing charges for his many crimes. The trial is a media sensation, with the world watching as the Bay Harbor Butcher's true identity is finally revealed. The prosecution paints Dexter as a cold-blooded killer, while the defense argues that he saved countless lives by eliminating dangerous criminals. The jury here would be conflicted, and while the evidence against Dexter is overwhelming, the defense presents a compelling argument that Dexter's actions, while illegal, were morally justifiable. They bring in victims' families who were saved from potential harm by Dexter's actions, creating a moral dilemma for the jury in charge of Dexter's verdict. Characters from Dexter's past, such as Deborah in flashbacks or video recordings, Rita's children, Aster and Cody, and even survivors of his vigilante justice testify. Some defend Dexter's actions while others condemn them. These testimonies provide deep emotional moments and insights into Dexter's psyche and the impact he had on those around him. Angel Batista is called to the stand, and his testimony becomes a turning point in the trial. He struggles with his loyalty to Dexter and his duty to uphold the law. Batista's testimony could either sway the jury towards conviction or raise enough doubt to save Dexter, and this one is kind of open-ended. Harrison's role in the trial is crucial. He's torn between the truth of what his father did and the fact that Dexter saved him from a life of darkness. Harrison could take the stand, delivering an emotional testimony that highlights his father's dual nature, both as a parent and a remorseless killer. The jury's decision is the climax of the entire season. If they find Dexter not guilty, it could lead to public outrage and vigilante attempts to take justice into their own hands. However, if found guilty, the series could explore Dexter's life on death row, reflecting on his past while awaiting execution, since, you know, Florida's a death penalty state. If they want the ending to not be clear-cut though, and have the potential for another continuation after this, then I could see the trial ending with a shocking twist. Perhaps Dexter escapes during the chaos of the verdict, or a mistrial is declared, leaving his fate unresolved. This would set up the next phase of the series, keeping viewers on edge about what Dexter will do next. And the last scenario of this video might be the craziest one yet. After surviving the gunshot wound and being captured, Dexter is approached by the FBI. His identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher is confirmed, and he's facing certain death or life in prison. However, instead of immediately prosecuting him, the FBI sees an opportunity. Given Dexter's extensive knowledge of criminal psychology, profiling, and his ability to evade capture for years, they approach him with a proposition: work with them as a confidential consultant or face the full weight of the justice system. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's really stupid, and honestly, I don't know if this show would ever have a satisfying ending if they went that route. Either way, drop your predictions and scenarios in the comments down below. The more detailed, the better, and I'll read all of them. Subscribe.